Well, the idea is to share the main topics you are talking about, the main conclusions. It could be answers, it could be new questions, it could be, it depends, okay? Then we start with the first group about museums. The microphone, please, see if you can. Yeah.
Hi. So, hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
We focus on the question how to avoid mistrust institutions and avoid tokenization. After a long conversation and discussion, we resume this in three topics. One is the redistribution of authorities. The second one is transparency, claim and counterclaim. And the third is be aware that the word contact can be romanticized.
Sorry, can you repeat the last one?
Yeah. Be aware that the word contact can be romanticization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Romanticize. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. The second group about lifelong learning.
Yeah, so I will ask the group to help me because we had a lot of ideas. We were not as organized as you in having three main outcomes, but we were organized in our own organization. So yeah, we discussed the question of imbalances of power, but also the tokenization, so tokenism, and a little bit the mistrust to institutions. And I think we kind of agreed that lifelong learning is essential to empower people to be active in their and defend their voice and their rights, so they cannot be tokenized and used by others. But also we agreed that lifelong learning must be accessible to all in every different forms and different learning environments that are not necessarily all institutionalized. At the same time, we also raised the issue that lifelong learning, as well as as much as it can be freeing and helping personal development, if used wrongly, if institutionalized, can also be used for brainwashing. So we had, for instance, in Hungary, a case where lifelong learning programs were used to build a generation of people that will defend a certain narrative. So I think we need to be careful how we use lifelong learning and how free it is to different people for their own personal development, not just for a career, not just for a degree or and so on. And what else? What did I forget? Yes, we said that indeed lifelong learning is a lifetime playground. So we should, it's an adventure we should embrace as such, and not necessarily because we have an end goal, but the experience itself, the journey, it's important.
Thank you very much.
Nope. Okay.
Oh,
thank you very much to my group.
Thank you. The third group, please. We have good conclusions.
Yeah, so the third group talks about cultural centers, and we basically look at the question of power imbalances, and we came up with four main thoughts. So the first one being that as cultural centers, we continuously need to reflect on our power and positionality, so that goes not only on the organizational level, but also the people that work in these institutions. Diversifying the context, so yeah, we need to mirror each other in these sort of encounters and context zones, and also try to humble each other when talking about power. Another one being co-creation, so co-creating new frameworks of power, so including people from disadvantaged backgrounds and not just talking about them. And the last one also is, yeah, we need to be aware of the memory of a situation we're in, or the organization as well. yeah. The last one being also, I think, a bit more reflection in general. So why are we doing this? So when talking about the question of power imbalances in cultural centers, we also need to ask ourselves as organizations, why are we thinking even about it? So that also plays a role.
Okay, thank you very much. The next group, the fourth.
Okay, this is becoming very unoriginal. What we talked about, acknowledging power imbalances. We were set on doing others too, but we just used all our time there. So yeah, I mean, much has been said already, but our group was more about policies, cultural policies, and in more particular sense, international cultural relations policies, which is our bread and butter. We talked about different sort of stages and important acknowledgements and also partly how to act on this. So, of course, the first step is to acknowledge this, that these exist, these power imbalances in everything that we do. But then what? How can we then move on to having very clear, like who is deciding on topics, who is deciding on priorities, on projects, on the design of things, on evaluation, and approaches, like working approaches of projects. Who actually decides what is important there? And from a EUNIC, EU National Institute for Culture perspective, we also try to constantly tell our members, to be open to the local context and actually learn what's going on there before imposing certain approaches and topics. And in extension, or by extension, then work on relations that are equal, not necessarily equal in the sense of workload or people doing the exact same thing or having the same capacity or whatnot, but at least to have a certain equal level of access to information, decision making, and all those things. And there are ways that you can actually do this. You just need time and work and effort to sit around the table and to let go of your old school ways of doing things. We, of course, also talked a little bit about, EU priorities and EU funding and EU programming. Luckily, we are not the EU, so we could all speak freely here. But, of course, we acknowledge that the work that's been done, it needs to fit into certain EU priorities. And then, again, the question is who's setting these priorities and who is invited to be included in these decision-making and agenda-setting sessions. And of course, also there, along all these different steps of way of EU policy making, especially in terms of international cultural relations, we just need more experts around the table who are actually doing this across the globe. Stakeholders, participants, whatever, and obviously not only from Europe. Let's see, other things have been said. Knowledge imbalance is a very important one. That's sort of a side product of power imbalances, is that there is a very large imbalance of knowledge, of funding, networks, like who has access to the right people. That also requires active work to create more balanced systems there. So then for the more established networks and organizations, the advice is, to be generous, to be open to share. Not just to have the same people around the same table all the time. It also is a little bit close to the diversity in contact zone question that we had before. But how can you ensure that knowledge is also shared amongst a much larger group and demography than you normally know? And yeah, maybe then the last one just to highlight is we need to be realistic, of course. We all live in a system that is in place. Of EU priorities, EU funding. We're now very heavily focused on the EU, I know. How can we make this work, in the best and equal and fair way? What kind of wiggle room? It's important to find then the wiggle room within this system where, yes, there are priorities, and yes, they may be set from, a certain history or a certain mindset, but also find a way within to be creative and to make sure that you can still do meaningful work that is actually towards a more, better balance also in terms of power. I think that's it. Okay, thank you.
Always about power and empowerment. Okay, the next group about digital culture and technology.
And we talked about, guess what? power imbalances. But also about memory. That's I'm really happy about it. So of course in the digital space the thing that comes out in terms of power imbalances is who owns the space, who owns the digital space, and who has the power in it, of course. And we quickly came to the conclusion in terms of there is a third party outside the people that are interacting inside the contact zone. That third party that could be the owner of the platform or the government that can see through the platform. Well, that presence breaks the dynamic of trust inside a contact zone. So this conversation led us to the bigger conversation: is the digital space a real contact zone? And in that regard, specific platforms, specific digital spaces, but also we talked about clouds, infrastructure, so very physical things that present different level of a way of hindering access. Well, with this question in mind, we realized that the question of trust and accessibility in the digital space, in the technological space, are big obstacles that in principle the digital space ticks all the boxes, but it depends on the community and also on these issues of trust and accessibility that should be taken into account. And of course, these were all questions that we were asking ourselves. We tried to find an answer, and the most direct answer was to find alternatives, other types of spaces, and quitting the external platforms. You know really well who we are talking about. But also in this domain, by empowering communities that are able also to build their online and digital space in that regard, we also found a criticality, meaning that if we build plenty of small spaces that are not interconnected between each other, well, we are erasing the connection between the different contact zones, and so that's an issue that we have to be aware of. On another note, the memory question, the first thing that came out was, yes, memory, the way we create memory, we present memory inside the digital space and through digital cultural heritage. Well, in that way, you're also exposing a community in that way, and you're presenting it to the wider audience, but also you are endangering it in a way. There was the case of bullyism online or ostracization of the specific community. So these are issues that should be taken into account. Of course, the power of digital is the power of dissemination, so enlarging the scope of who you are presenting these to and the conversation that you're opening up. But at the same time, you are bringing to a wider audiences, specifically talking about the digital cultural heritage, biases and colonization elements that are already present in our heritage, and you're bringing it to a wider audience and digitalizing it. So a lot of questions, not a lot of answers, but I think that it nourishes a bit the conversation.
Thank you very much, great. Okay, and the last but not least group, about artistic education.
Yes, now the first one is maybe quite unique because we talked about interdisciplinarity and how that relates to the contact zone. We unpacked that for a while and then settled on a discussion on whether artists in the contact zone can be mediators. Our answer to that was yes. We feel that artists often speak a different language that can be really useful in the contact zone, striking a different chord by introducing, for instance, music or dance or simply reading a poem. And we felt that that was really could be a strength of interdisciplinarity in the contact zone. In general, we felt that interdisciplinarity in the contact zone is a form of strength. If you have different perspectives represented, this is this can make a group much stronger. In the education setting, that can of course be by bringing different layers of the organization together, but also different disciplines, and that seemed to make a lot of sense. So that requires structure, but at the same time, we also said it also, these schools, for instance, need spaces where people can meet informally, for instance, to have great places to have meals and to meet each other socially, where a lot of projects are started. I think this is also what happens at these kinds of gatherings, at the meals and the coffee and so on, that people meet that have never met before, and that's exactly what happens in the art school. So that's that topic. And of course, we also dealt with the power relations, because this is a big topic in art schools and in all higher education in general. We first settled on a topic that many of us were passionate about, that has been very, very complicated in recent history. That has been student protests around Israel and Gaza. And many of you have followed this, and we shared many different perspectives and many different experiences that art schools have had with this. Some where there were protests for months and months and months, and some where nothing happened, and leadership also responding very, very differently. And so this is something where we, in the end, realized that the power relations were really important for creating space for a safe conversation, but for everyone in the art school, from all the students to the leaders, and having really good ground rules with each other that everyone agrees on, such as nonviolence and so on, being a very, very important condition for the contact zone. We then moved into a more general space on power relations, thinking about the groups themselves, and that can even be outside of the art school, but it is also within. Having a group where there's different hierarchy present in the group, it matters who speaks first. Certain people, or who speaks loudest, who has the most body language, and so on. And this is something that really matters to whoever is leading the conversation, to be really, really mindful of that, by maybe rotating leadership in such a setting, or keeping back until everybody has spoken, seeking the consensus, and so on. We were all saying this is not so easy, because if you're not there and they take a decision you don't like and you come in, you happen to be the leader, what do you do with that? But we also had situations where we acknowledged that, for instance, in opera productions or something like that, the director in the end does have to make decisions sometimes. There are settings that are under huge time pressure where we can see that the power relation just needs to be acknowledged, and you need to find a form to deal with that. So all this very relevant in art education, but also outside of it. And that's us.
Thanks a lot, Maria. And Sarah, do you want to share the ideas from the streaming group?
Yeah, a lot of ideas. So the group online had a multi-sectoral approach, because people were coming from many different backgrounds and they discussed different questions. So let's start from the first one. A lot of insights here. So the first they picked is how to acknowledge power imbalances in/through a contact zone. Marta said that flexibility and understanding is the key, in her opinion, because not everybody can express themselves as easily, and we should definitely recognize that. Zaira brought the example of the African Museum in Belgium, showing that power imbalances are still embedded there, and you can very easily see it in the fact that no people from the Congolese diaspora are involved in the administrative or artistic direction of the museum. So to be aware of what is happening in nowadays context, it's also very important. And Beatrice, I think this is a very nice quote to end the workshop, is saying, misunderstanding is not a failure, but a part of the contact zone. And that was the first question. The second one that was explored is how to avoid mistrust in institutions and tokenization. The group agreed generally that it is important to be really honest and transparent about what can be understood, hence changed, and how topics can be perceived differently depending on the context, Likewise, it's important to go beyond surrounding yourself with like-minded people and ensuring that communities being discussed actually have a voice in the process, very similar to what was being discussed in yesterday's panel and also today. Third question, how much time do we have? Because they were very active. So what is the meaning of memory in the contact zone? Memory in the contact zone is not a stable record of the past, but it's active, embodied process that is continually being rewritten. Then the next question they discussed is about moving from safe spaces to brave spaces. And here, the focus were more about what do we actually mean about when we say safe space. It's kind of an illusion because safety in cultural institutions has meant protecting the dominant group from discomfort, while marginalized communities are expected to be quietly bearing the historical trauma. Moving to a brave space means accepting that democratic coexistence in a contact zone is going to be potentially messy, but the only way to move past performative inclusion and into actual structural justice. And also some thoughts here about the fact that if we really want to move to a space that is not safe but brave, we have to open it to people that don't share the same values, don't share the same languages, in which disagreement is part of what is being discussed. Otherwise, we end up just preaching to the choir. And last and final question, what do we do when conflict arises and the others do not listen? It's a very common point with the previous one, saying that we have to make sure of the conditions needed to ensure the respect is there. So active listening, acknowledging where the differences are stemming from, and understanding that disagreement is part of the process and the agreement must not be the final result. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. You can find the good conditions in the curriculum of the training for the contact zone. Okay. Very rich ideas. Please notice to the facilitators, send us and to Mikkel the different conclusions, different ideas to have all of them. And don't forget. And also, we are out of time. Let me, 5 minutes. I want that you think about a word that you want to share with the rest of the group. It could be a concept about the that you have got in this session, an emotion, a feeling, idea, a question, very briefly. Yeah? Do you want to share? Okay. Think about one concept, one idea, one word, only one. We start. No, it's not possible to. We start. Do you want to write or do you want to? No, we can say. No. Each person, one idea. Listening. Tokenization. Listening is superpower. Unstable. Unstable heritage. Oh, thank you. Talking together.
Deconstructing propaganda.
Deconstructing propaganda. Okay. Adventure. Okay. Being open. Interdisciplinary. Disagreement. Ambiguity. Okay. Change.
Abuse of power comes as no surprise.
Okay, can you repeat?
Abuse of power comes as no surprise.
Okay. Acceptance.
Hope.
Help.
Hope.
Hope. Thank you. Disagreement. Acknowledgement. No. Counter. Innovation. Do you want to say? Change. Misunderstanding. Okay, Lars.
Messiness.
Messiness. Okay?
Empathy.
Empathy.
Humility.
Humility.
Without borders.
Without borders. Karen, do you want to share something? Soft power. Thank you very much. Let's go.
Before we go, thank you so much, Roberto, and all of our facilitators. Actually, may we have a huge applause for them that they came here to join us. Thank you so much.